Hey everyone, Bryan Barletta here from Sounds Profitable, and I'm excited to bring you another product deep dive. Today I'm back with Tony Simmons, CEO of Sonnant, to dig into Sonnant's sales insights. Tony, welcome back to the Deep Dive series.
Good to be here again, Bryan.
So let's kind of like rehash what we've gone over with Sonnant. So why don't you remind people a little bit about Sonnant, what we did in the previous videos, and then let's talk about what we're going to dig into today.
Excellent. Yeah, look, Sonnant's a platform that's used predominantly for workflow management and focus on monetizing inventory, audio content, whether that comes from broadcast or podcast or radio. And really, there's a whole range of tools that fit in with the publishing lifecycle of audio, bringing automation where that helps with workflow to bring efficiencies and get things done more quickly, more efficiently. And then from the revenue side, we're really looking at the advertisers and how that advertising can be more premium. You can extract more yield from your revenue. And today, sales insights, how the sales team can get in-depth understanding of the content to help grow advertising revenue across the board.
So we got operational tools to increase the flow and make it easier on the teams executing on everything. We have insights that let you know a little bit more about what you're working with. And then you have sales enablement, which allows you to really put everything to the test, combine it all there and make money off of it.
Said it perfectly, as always.
Well, I'm excited about insights. I love analytics. I love looking at things. I think that one of the worst things that's happened in podcasting in the last year is that we've all been focusing on filling holes from some acquisitions, and we haven't been looking at insights as much. We don't get a ton of data in podcasting, but in no way does that mean that we're doing enough with it. Context is massive, and we should be the leaders in it because it's so easy for us to turn that audio into text and dig into it more on contextual. There's plenty of survey data out there. There's plenty of data we can pull from IP and user agent. We have a few signals, but to say that we're not digging into enough is really an understatement. So let's start off on this dashboard. So this is, I'm a publisher, I believe, and this would be me looking at my network of shows.
Correct. So whatever inventory you have that can be plugged into Sonnant, you can start to build up a really good picture of the context of all the different topics, of what people are talking about. And again, we use transcription to start that first bit of turning voice into text. And then we're using our own tools and customer requirements to build out natural language processing, which then tags, contextualizes, categorizes, and indexes everything. And that gives you this incredibly powerful overview of your content. And the last piece that we're talking about now with the sales enablement is visualizing this in a way that sales teams can attack this information for new sales, for pre-sales, for campaign management, and where the rubber really hits the road is cross-selling advertising onto other inventory or upselling advertisers because there's other available inventory and opportunities.
Well, those last two things are absolutely something I want to dig into, but I want to remind folks of how you get stuff like uploaded into Sonnant is that everything's pulled from the RSS feed. So whether it's a public feed or a private feed, however you want to make that available, you're able to provide that to Sonnant. And as it's released, it's downloading the files and transcribing it, correct?
That's correct. But we can also come in via API to a host and pull that information before it's made public. So some of the tools we work with is about, putting in ad markers, which we discussed on the last deep dive. And that happens before it's made public. So that's happening at a host level and done via API so that when it is made public, those mid-rolls are already placed.
Fantastic. So that's also the ability to augment how your current setup is handled from your hosting platform for the ones that you're integrated with. And I assume also be able to upload to you, have that augmented there, and then pushed out that way as well.
Absolutely.
Awesome. So you talked about selling inventory, one of my favorite things. So let's dig into that. So these tools tell you a little bit about the show. We talk a lot about analytics in general at Sounds Profitable. And there's, I think the audience watching this is going to understand how to dig into some of these things. And obviously, let's dig into the different sections here, but how do we use it? That's going to be the most exciting question that I want to answer with this. How do you utilize this? And what have you seen people do with it?
Okay, so the first thing with sales performance is really getting a deep understanding of the content and what people are talking about. So the Sonnant platform is providing you with a deep breakdown of a whole lot of different categories of communication. So you can see here you've got key terms and locations, but as you go through the content, you could start to see the nationalities. So a lot of this is entity extraction and understanding. And as you look over here with IAB categorization, this is context. This is really understanding, well, how does that all gross up into an advertising category? And then you can start to see brands and people and organizations. So as you get this insight into, geez, what are we talking about in this content? You can start to make informed decisions at all end, again, of the publication spectrum. What are we talking about? Are we talking about the right things? Should we be talking about it? Now that we're talking about it, who's the best advertisers for it? What are our target markets look like? And then breaking this down even further from the topics, in what inventory is this happening? And that's the next step, is to go into the inventory and then say, oh, look, we can really see deeply in this inventory, this advertiser should be here and they're currently not. Let's go have a chat to them about that.
Now, when we set up this view, am I able to look at it at an individual show as well as a grouping of shows?
Yeah, absolutely. So, back on the platform, I can set up different collections. So here I've just set up some example collections because this is my demo client, but I've got different collections based on whatever categories, and our customers have these collections set up for different radio stations, different time slots, different shows, and you can slice and dice inventory however you desire.
That's great. So if you want to get incredibly granular, you can, but this is great for bundling inventory together and looking at it from different perspectives. A lot of what we've been talking about, it sounds profitable, and what I think the industry needs to talk about is reach, right? The ability to look at the inventory, not just at the top performing shows, but across your network, to look at getting those people that are consuming the content where they're consuming it with the most affinity. And that might be smaller shows, that might be newer shows, so many different ways to approach that. It's not all about the top 500 shows and just focusing there. So this tool is really focusing on the context of what's there, what matches, what over indexes between those groupings and how to group them together. Because I get the feeling that if I put my entire network in here, I could look by some of these categories and start to peel off groupings of shows that specifically just cover young people. One of my favorite topics is a dad of 2 children. I might be able to identify that I have shows that over-index in talking about terms young people, whether that is actually talking about younger kids and from a positive or digging into it more. The Sonnant tools are going to tell you about the sentiment analysis side of it, but being able to grab all of your inventory, look at this, and start using this to peel it off into other collections to then learn more about those collections more granularly sounds really exciting.
Yeah, and look, there's some new ways that people are using this data to do things that, you always come up with, let's create the data, let's create some visualizations, and then the customers are coming up with these innovative ways to use this data, and some of these are wow moments. So, for example, the Super Bowl, we're looking at a certain time period, a bit like, looking at Google Analytics for when a particular word search is happening. We can start to see now when Super Bowl chatter starts to happen across your radio, across your podcast. All of a sudden, when you can see a particular ramp up, you can now say to advertisers, now's the correct time to launch the Super Bowl
100%.
campaign. So previously it would have been these arbitrary numbers. We think that it's here. And, there might be other factors that bring that date forward or push it back. The news cycle's very fluid. So if something comes up that pushes out the chatter about Super Bowl, don't launch it today. You're not going to get full value. And this is a new way of looking at starting a campaign, but also loving your customer, improving customer satisfaction and relations. Saying, if you launch today, you may get the reach, but it's going to be covered by, presidential elections or whatever. Yep. Tomorrow we can start to see, hey, that chatter's back. Let's launch today. And so this type of way of looking at inventory is the future.
Now, this is showing like the time period. It says the date range on there. It's a collection of all that. This says it here. How do I see that graph over time to know what's coming? Right, like
so,
to know when that topic is ticking up more and more.
So we've got a time series graph as well where you can put in a date range. This is just using the entire date range, and we just use the term Toyota. So we can say to Toyota, if they're a customer, look, these are all the mentions of your brand. If we click through, we'll be taken directly to the shows that they're mentioned of. And if you go even deeper, you can go directly to those mentions of Toyota on the show. But again, what you can see now is over a period of time, and this is looking at it by quarter, how often this is mentioned, and then clicking through, you can start to see the shows that they're mentioned on it as well. So a really powerful way to look at mentions of brands over time series.
And that it's such perfect timing. So this deep dive launches around the time that the NFL draft is going live. And I believe I read very quickly that ESPN actually sold out of all their inventory on it. So now we're into the next stage. What other media is on there? I read a fantastic article about a Twitch video game influencer who covers sports games, I believe, selling out of all of their inventory because they're going to do a commentary show on the draft. And that's wild. And then Odyssey, a major podcast network, is talking about how they have inventory about the topic and coverage of the NFL draft. That's amazing. These trends and topics are really powerful. And what you're saying here is that by using this trend graph, I can see like, hey, we're kind of talking about it, but like when's the go day? Right?
Yes.
If the draft is on day 10 of a cycle there, you know, I might assume that we want to start from day one and start advertising, but day one might be too early. We might want to wait and try and time it just right. And now, obviously, that's a different type of campaign. You might not be able to guarantee the inventory the same way, but if you're able to look across your whole network and see who's talking about it with increasing frequency and prioritize those ads to those specific shows, that's a great way to focus on where the hype is at that moment, make the ad feel contextual, and take advantage of that, honestly, blip. Something that if you don't have the right tools, you can't catch it. But my big question is, can I set my terms and get a bunch of alerts from them? Can I create a collection and say, I want one for NFL draft, I want one for the Super Bowl, I want these, here's my threshold on when it becomes something that I want to be told it's time to go?
Brian, you know the answer to that. Of course you can. So, I mean, you know, what's the great upside is you've got your own media monitoring tool set within Sonnant. So if you have any number of terms you can then track, and there's a couple of reasons you might want to do it, and I'll tell you some other use cases of why customers are doing that, but you can track them and get a notification sent to your email or someone else's within the team. As soon as that's mentioned, it's clipped up, you can click through, you can listen to it straight away. So you've got all the tools of having that mention reporting happening. And look, what is interesting, and we use an example of a charity down here that has a particular cultural event that happens in a particular month. And what people wanted to see was, is there enough chatter about this across casual mentions and get notified of all of these mentions? And as soon as that starts to ramp up, they go off to another group of advertisers who want to ambush market, might be a bit harsher word when you're talking about a charity, but that's effectively what they want to do. They want to align their brand with this particular cultural event, and they've got the statistics, they've got the mentions reporting, they're being notified, and it's proactively telling the account manager or the sales manager, now's the time to talk to these brands and show them that they should be advertising in these particular shows. So really it's a prompt to go have these conversations. And look, we're integrating this with Salesforce and HubSpot so that the account managers are not sitting idle waiting for things. The system is proactively telling them there's sales opportunities here across the board.
I'm such a fan of that. By the way, I believe the term is conquesting, which isn't that much better than ambushing. So I like either of them, but I think it's a smart strategy.
It was called ambush marketing when I was doing marketing.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
This is really smart, right? Like having those triggers, knowing when it's time to think about things. I've been an advocate for the fact that inventory is fleeting, right? Like shows receive a majority of their consumption in those first 30, 60, or 90 days. What can you do, especially and even closer to release date often? What can you do to take advantage of that? How can you bundle things? And that's the unique value prop. And it's not just like an artificial bundle where I say, I'm going to combine this targeting and you can buy this unique deal. You know, I'm going to negative geo-target all the major metropolitan areas, you know, and we're only going to do like sports shows and it's going to be $10 CPM or something crazy like that for 24 hours only, right? It's not like a weird combo like that for no reason. What you can say is cultural event is coming up. An important movement is coming up. A topic is gaining speed. Do you want to be a part of it? We can add you into it right now. We don't know how long it's going to last, but you know, we're here. We're seeing the rise. You want to be a part of this.
I mean, it's just perfect. You think about what are the challenges for sales teams or advertising, you know, trying to get more revenue in from existing customers is having real-time insight into data that advertisers care about. So aligning themselves with something that is cultural or something that's happening. I suppose the reverse of that is moving your advertising away from it, that brand safety aspect of saying, I actually don't want to be aligned to that. So again, if that comes back to customer satisfaction, and if you've got that transparency and you can have that dialogue with existing customers, what we see is your ability to sell more across your inventory increases. That's proven. And then attracting new customers by showing them you've got deep insights, which is something that most of our customers are seeing for the first time. When they see this and they show it to their customers, there's more than a wow moment. There's a reason to go over the line and sign up.
I think one of the really exciting aspects about this on the brand safety side, right, is the threshold of tolerance, right? Like there might be certain topics where, and think about it on your own network, right? You have to manage a bunch of shows. Tom and I really focus on this. Tom Webster, the partner at Sounds Profitable. The emphasis really that podcasting isn't immediately live. Like that's a really fun part about it. So especially in this situation where it's uploaded and you guys can transcribe it before it has all the ad slots in there, we start to see like, oh, people are talking about those topics. We've passed the threshold. I get the update. I get the notification. I'm able to listen to that air check and I say, nope, cut it. I can't sell this episode. We're losing too much on the revenue. Or being able to say to an ad, just like preemptively being like, nope, we've hit the threshold. I'm going to pause it for this advertiser and we'll figure it out later, because it's better to remove that association than allow it to go live. That allows you to be more granular than just blanket block anytime this word comes out. It allows you to make that decision. That decision is really powerful, especially in the flow that you have here, that this isn't, it's already live. What is it? It's before it's live. What is it?
Yeah. Look, and I think it's more than that, right? So brand safety is really important, and everyone's going to expect, I think, that in the next couple of months or years, it's going to be table stakes. There's a question now of who pays for it. I think
my favorite question.
Yeah, right. And I think, at some point in time, it's got to be the creator of the inventory that's got to make sure their inventory is safe. The advertiser's saying, hey, here's what I don't want. You work it out. So the publisher's going to need that detail and that granularity to be able to work it out, to automate it. Obviously, at scale is going to be the other side of the equation. But I think we touched on this last time. When we speak to people with large budgets who want to buy advertising space, their number one and number two and number three and number four and number five thing is reach and frequency. If you can say to them, you've got $10 million to spend or $1 million or however much, we can help you get there. That's the number one thing. Now, okay, number two, we don't want to be on the KKK podcast. That's a given, right? But number one, how do we get there? And so having this granularity obviously helps opt out from unsafe content. But what the granularity does, if I can't get there with the shows I've already got in my top 20 shows or my, really popular above the line shows, I've now got the tools to go back to them and say, look, we can help you get there because we've got these other shows, like we were talking earlier, contextually aligned, good demographic fit, talking about the kind of content that you love, and cross-selling that inventory into that original pool. And it does two things. For the publisher, they can now show that this show's got better utilization or better monetization than it did previously. And for the brands and the advertisers, they're getting their full campaign being able to be run across this inventory.
I like that a lot, and you just made me think about the fact that all of these advertisers, the major advertisers looking for reach, have like search keyword lists. So being able to upload that into Sonnant and to see what inventory it identifies is fantastic, because they've already done it, right? This isn't something unique. It's still context. It's still going to flag the same type of things, and you're going to use their research to prove out where they should be in podcasting. And I like what you're saying here, because there's two angles to go about it, right? Like, the idea of anchoring, using one show and saying like, this is going to be the premium one, this is the one you're here to buy, but let me show you all the shows that index well with the same type of audience, the same type of content, the same type of intent. That's awesome, because it allows you to use that show to raise the other ones up. But also, if you sell out of inventory on that show, you can justify it for the extension, right? You can help use that, not only to just like bundle it and say, here's a reduced rate, but you can simply say, hey, you bought all that inventory. Clearly it's working. Let's talk more. Here are more shows.
Right, exactly. And I don't want to go too far off piste with this, but you know what it also does in terms of then making recommendations, for the larger organizations that have their own playlists or run their own socials, to be able to cross promote, because you're getting the same level of insight. This show has similar topics or similar themes to this show. So the marketing teams now have some cross-promotional insight as well. And then if you're building playlists or recommendations, same sort of thing. We're starting to build a picture of similar type of content with similar themes. Yep, some of your ones up in neon lights and definitely want to be there. But these shows have good audience, same sort of topics, rusted on audience. We can see they come back. Great theme to be advertising on.
I completely agree. And what's really interesting about this is one of the first conversations you and I have, I don't believe it's part of a deep dive, was this idea of the contextual relevance to a segment, right? Like, if the nightly news starts off and talks about something and then has an ad break and then has more content for 10 or 15 minutes and has an ad break and then talks about a murder and then has an ad break, the first two ads are not brand unsafe, right? They're not unsafe because they're further away from that, right? The segment association, the proximity to the content that the ad break is, you don't throw away the whole thing. That's a really important part of it. What's interesting here is this is really laying that ground floor, and your integrations there are moving towards that. Now, greater ad tech and podcasting doesn't have that concept, right? There's no necessarily way for any of these platforms on like a stable way. Like nobody has, there's no framework for that. That's the right word I'm looking for us to adopt that. But this excites me because it leads towards there, or it at least enable me to do that. I would know that I have a series of mid-rolls that are within 3-minute proximity to that topic, right? It might be a little bit more granular today, but this is setting the stage to see if there's appetite for that, because I think that that's going to be a home run.
Yeah, and I think, again, sentiment becomes a part of that equation as well. There's this famous scene in a movie, we call it in Australia Flying High. I think in America it's called Airplane, that old movie where they're in the middle of this disastrous situation on a plane, and they're all sitting watching the movie on the thing, which is an airplane crashing. If you're talking about that on the news, an airplane disaster, Delta or Qantas don't want to be the next one up. I mean, yes, there's contextual alignment, but that's, then you've got a sentiment problem. That's bad sentiment. So, all of this stuff has to work in concert. And again, for us, the premium, nirvana for advertisers, the ones paying the bills, is that reach and frequency. So we've got to get there, really quickly or cost effectively and in a way that doesn't tarnish their brand.
I agree. Well, we jumped around a little bit on here. So, before we wrap this part up, I'd love to see the other characteristics that are there, the other insights, all the graphs that you have there, so we can understand what we're able to work with and set alerts on.
So if I go back to some of these, the other thing that is really interesting, we talk about brand safety a lot, is you can start to see what type of sensitive topics are coming up a lot. And again, clicking through will lead you exactly to these shows. But you can start to build up an idea of what shows are particularly unsafe. And at an inventory level, you can also see, what is brand safe versus unbrand safe. You can start to understand, okay, well, actually there are advertisers for unsafe content. There are people who want to advertise on true crime, which is gruesome. It's a great fit for their brand. So again, being able to segment sensitive topics is really important. From a product point of view, we had Toyota there before, but understanding what are casual mentions and what are paid mentions is really important for a sales team to help them be able to approach new brands, new products, because you can see that if a brand's trending across the board, maybe it's a new brand that people are starting to talk about. Great opportunity to go out and say, look, this is happening across our content. We're talking about your brand. It's a great fit, or at least, you've got something to start that conversation with. Organizations the same. People probably, not as much, but again, it's an insight into content. Some people don't want to advertise where Donald Trump's being talked about. Others see perfect alignment. So again, having this granularity of entities and what people are talking about is great. The categorization of advertising categories into IAB categories is crucial to be able to understand whether it's a good fit from an advertising, a standard advertising set of characteristics.
Now, are there any plans on the roadmap for more categories or more options for insights here?
Oh, there is. So again, working with customers, looking at not just being able to, manage the campaign and find new opportunities, but deep integrations into CRMs so that, your sales team's fully integrated. Then being able to overlay demographic information. We all know we're moving to a cookieless world, so we're going to get less and less device information about the individual. We're going to have more and more understanding about the content. How does that fit together? Building up a picture that this type of demographic likes this type of content or listens to this type of content is vitally important. And then being able to overlay and make recommendations with this data into mid-rolls. So based on, what is sitting there to be advertised, where's the best place for it? And I suppose, again, we talk about increasing revenue by using this data. What about increasing advertising yield? So squeezing premium advertising dollars out because of, really good hyper targeting or super targeting down the funnel of your ad placement. So all of this stuff works in really well from, we call it monetization as an industry, but there's revenue generation, there's advertising, and there's pure sales. And all of this data is the future of making that really effective.
I could not agree more. The more data we get on contextual, the more we can attack reach. The more we can attack reach, the more we prove out this medium. So I am a big fan of any product that enables people to do that. And I love the integration aspect, both of the hosting platforms, the operational tools, and all the others that you're open to. By the way, I really want to emphasize that if you are, work with a competitive product or even a complementary product, either way, reach out to Sonnant. I think what's really neat here is that the overlap in the podcasting space is not as one-to-one as people think. There's many reasons to use similar tools, and being able to integrate between them is really great to figure out the strengths of each tool. And the team at Sonnant has been very open to integrations, which is really exciting.
Yeah, I think the visualizations as well, people are going to use your tableaus and these sorts of things for visualizing data. So, we've got a starting point here. Don't just reach out and say, we'd love an integration. Tell us what you'd like the data to do, because, the way we've built this from the outset is an incredibly robust database where everything's indexed. And might have said it before, for every word that's spoken, we're measuring about 30 different characteristics for that word, some of which, clearly we're not tapping into here. But if there's systems that integrate together where the sum of the parts as a whole is greater, then we want to integrate. We want to be able to work with that data, work with those use cases, and build them out. So we're, in that phase, and we are that sort of team that says, what do you want? What problem do you have? We can visualize that, or we can build automation for that data to flow into your system that's going to solve the problem. It's all there. There's gold in those hills, as they say.
That's fantastic. Well, folks, the big part about the product deep dives is that we're here to guide you through the overview of the platform, and I'm here to ask some tough questions to Tony and others. But every one of your specific needs may be different than what we walk through here. You might need your own hands-on product deep dive, and the team at Sonnant is there to help you with that. So please reach out to Tony and team. We'll have the links and email addresses in the description. And thank you, Tony, so much for joining us on this product deep dive, and we're excited for the next one.
Thanks a lot, Brian. We'll see you soon.